he was already in business many years, covering all the news, and he kept on pestering me about when can I tell everybody. I said, you can't tell anybody anything. And obviously ridiculous to tell a newsman you can't tell anybody anything. However, I always trusted him with everything, and with any kind of secrets that we had about who's developing, what's going on. And to this day, I still call him up and say, what the hell is going on with that group? What are they doing? And he's always been in the know. So for 15 years. 15 years, but before that, you can talk about that. One person that I want to, Mr. Sandridge, who was the second command at UVA, right? Or first? No longer, but we're really happy to have you here. And what you've done in development and for UVA and for the whole area, it's really impressive. So I know a little bit about development, but obviously you know a lot about keeping things together. Anyway, I'm going to give you Mike Marshall from the Crozet Gazette, who has taken it incredible. It's an incredible paper, and I think everyone knows it here, right? Who doesn't know the Crozet Gazette? Okay, you out. No, come on, I'm just kidding. You can learn about it. Anyway, you'll learn a lot.
I just got here yesterday.
I know. Once you learn about, you hear about what he's done, it's really quite impressive. All right, here you go. Thank you.
So, this person, let me introduce my wife. Here, I'm going to turn her around.
You have to talk into your microphone sometimes for people to hear.
Lodge called me up and they wanted to know if I would come talk about the Gazette. Well, sure, I can talk about the Gazette. I went around, I asked people, I said, the Lodge wants me to talk, what should I talk about? And they all had sort of blank expressions. When she first asked me, I thought to myself, well, you know, everything I know, I put in the paper. I got nothing left to say. So, if you read the paper, you pretty much know about me, you know some things about our operation. So, some people said to me, you need to make a speech. I say, okay, I'll make a speech. I've made some speeches. I said, what should I talk about? Well, they didn't have an idea for it. Can you hear it?
No.
That's better.
Do I need it closer?
That's better.
That's
Okay. So what we're going to do, I'm going to say a few things about how the Gazette got started and what our philosophy is and so forth. And then after that, however long that goes, then you guys can ask me questions and we'll talk about what it might be that you want to talk and find out about. So first, before we get into that, I want to introduce a couple people. One is Teresa Curry. You got to stand up, Teresa, for me. Come on. Yeah. And also Lynn Coffey. These are very excellent writers. Thanks, ladies. Appreciate it. And they're who you really want to be talking to when you talk about the Gazette. I'm the publisher and I'm the editor, but the reason you like it is because of them. And they're superb writers. The philosophy of the Gazette is that it's all about the words. This is not a popular concept in journalism right now, but we think it's about the words. And what we try to do is put together the best quality words that we can. After that, we're interested in pictures, but that's a harder problem. And so to the extent that we can get really excellent writers, very interesting writers, we'll be a success. And that's what we put the highest priority on, is the quality of the writing, the intelligence of the writing, and the clarity of the writing. When you get to the end of the story, there shouldn't be any questions left. You should know everything that you might naturally want to know about that headline that you read. And that's why we succeed, because we have really excellent writers, very talented people. I wish Lisa Martin was here so I could show her off to you a little bit. But Lisa here, my wife in the front row, had a stroke 2016. And before that, I've been mainly writing all the Gazette. And a couple of columnists who would write something about gardening or cooking or Dr. Reiser. I'm sure you'll appreciate Dr. Reiser. He came back after a long hiatus this month. He's going to keep writing for the Gazette, but a really exceptional doctor who can express medicine in a humorous and very intelligent way, so people can understand things about him. But that's who you really appreciate when you're appreciating the Gazette, is the people who write for it. And I just want to say that I'm very grateful for them for the job that they do. Now, 2006, I was working for the School of Law. I was their communications director. They had hired me about 6 years earlier. At that time, I was working for E.D. Hirsch, who you may know. He wrote a book called Cultural Literacy, and he had a school reform movement that was targeting curriculum. And I had done a bunch of books for him and various other things. The law school hired me to fix their problems with communications. They had terrible literature. They tried to recruit kids, and the stuff that they sent out to show them was junk. And they couldn't figure that out. They wanted to be famous, but they didn't know how to talk to the media. They didn't know how to attract them. The fact of the matter was, the lawyers were all, how many lawyers we got in the room? You better be careful. They were pretty shot in the head with themselves. They thought they were pretty important. They didn't want to make that much effort. After 6 years, I basically had solved their problems and showed them how it should look and showed them how they could get attention from the media. And at that point, they laid me off. They gave my job to my assistant. They gave her my title. They gave her my office. They gave me my responsibilities. Frankly, I doubt if they gave me my salary, but that's how it worked at the time. And so they gave me 6 months notice. And so we started saving money like something furious. And for 6 months we saved money. And then meanwhile I was applying for jobs. And time ran out, and the Gazette came out of that little piece of trauma. Anyway, that's what happened. I say often that God wanted the newspaper in Crozet, and he sort of cornered me into it, is how it worked. I applied for jobs. I had good credentials, all that kind of stuff. But it would get down to the final moment, and it would be me, I was 53 at the time, and a 22-year-old, and the interviewers would look at the 22-year-old and go, "Do you use a computer?" Well, they say, yeah. I said, well, I can use a computer. And invariably, the 22-year-old got the job. So I kept thinking, do they know what question to ask the computer? But no, anyway. So Lisa was getting terrified at this point. We had 2 kids in college at the time. It was not looking too good. We were watching the news one night, and CNN did a story on, this was happening to a lot of people in the boomer generation. They'd reached that point where they're fairly expensive for their employers, and they're looking at the cheaper kids, and they're flushing out the older guys particularly. And it said in this news report, well, 25% of these people will find a new job that was like their old job. And 25% of these people will find a job that's nothing like their old job and pays them less, but they gotta have some income, so they'll take that job. And 25% of those will just stop working entirely. That's it, they're over. They're done. Somebody else is gonna pay for them. And then the last 25%, these people are gonna have to make up their own job. And I basically thought, I'm in that category where I need to make up a job. I was very active in Crozet public life, I'll call it. We did a lot trying to manhandle the county. The county's trying to manhandle us. We're fighting back. They want to manage us. We want to manage them. I was sitting in a meeting in the firehouse. Firehouse used to have a meeting room in the back, fairly large size, probably half the size of this. Eventually, the firemen wanted the space and they converted it to other use. But back in the day, that's where we had all of our public meetings. And we were sitting there, and Lee Catlin, I don't know if you all know Lee. I don't see her in the room, so I can say what I want.
Oh, it's good.
Anyway, Lee was the spokeswoman for Albemarle County. And she was quite a field general, very intelligent, could see you coming, knew how to dodge you, knew how to corner you. It was a very formidable opponent for the public. And she was telling us some fait accompli that the county had decided was going to happen to Crozet. Jeez. So I turned to a lady who was sitting next to me, Mary Rice was her name, and I said they'd never do this to us if we had a newspaper. I said our problem is that they can tell us what's going to happen to us, and we just got to live with it. But that wouldn't last very long if everybody knew what was the plan. And like I say, 25% of these people had to find a job for themselves. They had to make up a job. So I told Lisa, I said, I'm going to start a newspaper. You talk about panic. I mean, who's believing in that? So we put out our first issue in June of 2006. Put together all the money we had. And the cover picture was a picture of the Ark. Remember they did a movie here in Crozet called Evan Almighty? Yeah. And they built a big fake Ark, which is sort of like half of an Ark made out of styrofoam. It was across the street here. And that was our big picture. We had a story about the movie. And then we also had our main story was the county telling Crozet that they thought that Crozet ought to be 24,000 people. Well, we just finished a master plan where we thought we were going for 12. What the hell, 24? So everybody was riled up about it. And Mary Rice, bless her heart, wrote an explanation of how the county got to 24. Just for y'all to know, we are at 12. So theoretically, we're finished. Now, obviously that's not what the county thinks. The county thinks, I think it still loves its number. It disavowed it for many years. Oh no, we never meant that. We never meant that. That's not true. But it's looking to me like it's a closer number to the ultimate reality than what we started out with when we were doing the original master plan in 2004. Lisa was impressed with the first issue because it looked like a newspaper. I mean, it looked like this. And her attitude was, where the hell did that come from? How did you do that? But you know, you got to look like you mean business when you start out. There's no point in pretending to be a paper. Just go out and be a paper. So there it was. Now, for the first 3 years, the Gazette was a public service operation, and I eventually got it where it would pay its own bills. Wouldn't pay my bills, but it would pay its own bills. Well, meanwhile, that money we saved in that last 6 months, it was dwindling down quick. And the reason was, everybody thought the paper was going to fail. At the time, there was a newspaper in Charlottesville called The Hook. And The Hook wrote a story about the appearance of the Gazette. Lisa Province, who's a Crozet resident, I don't see her here. But Lisa Province wrote the story. She's now working again for Seaville Weekly. And she had a 20-inch story. In the newspaper world, this is how we talk about stories. How long did they go? She had a 20-inch story. That's big time. That's like, 1,000 words. The first paragraph announced that the Crozet Gazette had come into existence. And the next 19 inches were predictions about how soon it was going to fail. And it was quotes from failed editors whose publications hadn't made it. And they all had something to say about the prospects for the Crozet Gazette. I would like to point out, the Hook is gone. And the Gazette is still here. So, I outran them. That's how the Gazette got started. People didn't want to advertise with me. They didn't want to cooperate with me because they just figured I was flash in the pan. and it was going to be over. I say 3 years. After 3 years, people started calling me. You know, people wanted to be in, and it's been that way basically ever since. The philosophy of the Gazette, if you put out quality that's fair-minded, you know, there you go. You don't have to worry about the rest of it. So a little bit of integrity, a little bit of intelligence, fair-minded, you'll be okay. And over time, this is true, proven to be true for the Gazette, and that's why we make it. We don't have an ad sales staff. You know, most papers have somebody that's out there pounding the sidewalks all the time trying to find somebody to buy an ad. And we don't do that. What we do is we make the advertisers want to be in it because they know that everybody reads it. And you can go around and look at stores where you see papers. If they're not flying out of the room, you know, and advertisers notice that. One of the ways we accomplish that is we put the newspaper out in businesses so that the businesses can see how long they last. Now, frankly, the strategy of the Gazette is if we're still on the street after a week, I'm almost tempted to pick them up. You know, if it doesn't look like it's scarce, if it doesn't look like everybody wants it and you may not get your copy, okay, then people start to think, why is that paper sitting there? You know, and it's turning yellow, and they think that paper's no good, people leave it. So that's basically how we sell ads, is we try and be very high quality and make them come to us. And so far, so good. So, having said how it got started, we'll talk about how it works as a business. Gazette takes about $20,000 a month to happen. We've gotten by on less in earlier years, but that's about what we need in terms of an ad base. When we started the Gazette, there were about 100 businesses that gave Crozet addresses as our home. Obviously, Charlottesville has an address that reaches into the west side of Crozet, so it could be a little bit higher than that. Right now, I think we have, I would estimate 150. My daughter Allie over here, who's the art department, she may know because she's handling all the ads. What was my point about advertising?
You were talking about,
What was that?
were you going to talk about how you solicited the first ads?
Well, I tried to solicit ads. You know, I mean, you gotta. Some of you may be salesmen. You got to be tough-skinned to be a salesman. I'll say that. You're going to hear no about 99 out of 100 times. Anyway, 20,000 would do it. If I could just make up a budget for myself, I'd want about 25,000 a month to do it, because I know I'm going to cover my expenses, and over time that would give me some money to do extra things. You know, just an insert or something supplemental. Do something that was going to cost me a little bit of money to do, which right now we really can't afford. We're coming in 18, 20 range, so you know, you look at after that first 3 years where we were thinking, is this going to, you know, the people are betting against us, are we going to make it or not? Forget what I'm trying to make a point about that, but hold on a sec.
Well, you're still here. Daily Progress isn't.
Well, the Daily Progress, in my opinion, is circling the drain. You know, they've got nothing left, and their whole philosophy is, thank you, David. Their whole philosophy is to sort of gouge the older reader. Older people, I'm included in that, 71. They were raised on print. They like print. And they're willing to pay a lot to keep print. The lady who is our proofreader, Louise Dudley, was my boss at UVA at one time when I was working in the news office, and she's been very charitable to me and has kept in touch, and she does our proofreading. And the woman is just relentless about grammar and mistakes, and you're the beneficiaries because the Gazette comes out pretty clean. All the time. I know we've never published one without a mistake, because once you publish it, then all the mistakes show themselves off. That's just the way it is in print. What was was I saying about Louise? Anyway,
The local issues are awesome.
you like
The
just,
local issues
yeah.
that are covered are
Yeah.
so.
Well, we're trying to make a newspaper that we want to read. You know, we're making it for you because we already know it. But we want to make something that you want to read. So we're just asking ourselves to be that kind of a reader.
But it's for the younger people, some of the local issues are about schools, a lot of them.
We do a lot of school coverage. Yeah.
Lisa Martin.
She's fantastic. Let me just say a couple of words about her since you brought her up. Lisa had her stroke and we advertised and said that we needed help because I couldn't leave the house so much. And Lisa answered and said she wanted to be an education reporter. She had written a couple of novels, but she had never done any reporting. And so, well, what the hell, God sends you people. And so here she was, he sends you people and you gotta know what to do with them. So we tried her out. Lisa Martin has a PhD in accounting. Now, who does that? Accounting? But I love it because, we say all the time when we're talking about reporting, what are the numbers? You give people numbers, all right, now they're going to start to make an analysis. And the great thing about Lisa is you give her a story in which there are a lot of numbers, and there's a lot of numbers in the school stories. And she can't be fooled. I mean, she just sees right through it, and she can break them down. Lisa Martin is the person who pointed out in the counties publishing their score results that they had taken kids who hadn't met the standard, but they had done better, and used it to inflate their numbers. And they were embarrassed. In fact, they actually had meetings in the county schools office about a Gazette, because we were the bad boys. We pointed out something about it. And I have to say, Lisa could write for anybody. I mean, if the Wall Street Journal knew about her, they might be calling her up. And in fact, Lisa got the Crozet Gazette on the front page of the Wall Street Journal in a story that she wrote about Henley Middle School. And they picked it up, and they actually put a link to her story on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. I mean, it's going for the Gazette, that's like the big time. That's the big time. She also got us in the Daily Mail. I don't know if y'all read the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail is the most read newspaper in the world. It's got a sort of a tabloid side. To my knowledge, they've only been sued one time. That's a pretty good record, because they're putting up a lot of stuff every day. But Lisa got us in there as well. And it might have been the same story or another story about schools. And just while we're talking about famous places we've been, you remember when all the congressmen were going through town and they hit the dump truck, the sanitary truck, which was a terrible thing, and we're sorry for that man who lost his life in that. But we had just cleared the Gazette, and I was walking back to my house, and there's two black helicopters, and they look like they're over Mid Springs. I said, what the? We got to go look at that. So I grabbed my camera and I started going towards Mid Springs. Couldn't get there. Already blocked off. And so I got up to at the end of Lanetown, and I took a picture of the stopped cars. At first they weren't. They hadn't cordoned things off so much, but soon they did. And we kept wondering what the hell was going on with that train. The little crowd that had gathered around there, and then first thing you know, we saw all these very famous congressmen and senators walking off the train. They were on their way to a Greenbrier. The Republicans were going to have a retreat down there. Was what they were up to. But it was interesting to see the government in action. That picture, we got, Crozet Gazette got famous again. And I think CNN used it.
Yeah.
Fox News used it. I actually took a picture of Fox News with the words Crozet Gazette on the screen. And who's going to believe it? So, and I think we got a call from a German TV station about it too. So, little train wreck can take you around the world. Back to the business plan. No, from the very first, it was month to month. And it's still month to month is what happens. We made enough money in December to do January. And now we think we're going to make enough money in January to do February. Things got close when COVID came out. If you're closed, you don't need an ad. So about 30% of our business says, yeah, we don't need you. Well, 30% of your business, pretty big number. Then we staggered on for 2 or 3 months, and we managed to get by, and we're still here. But if we were to lose 30% of our advertising, basically that's it's not worth doing line after that. So it's never happened. Here we are 18 years later. And each time we wonder how are we going to do it. Well, yeah, we're going to do it because guess what? The advertising came in. I guess we could get sensible and act like other businesses and actually hire salesmen. But so far we haven't needed to, is the fact. And like I say, if I had my druthers, I'd like about $25,000 a month in the budget. But I could get by on 18. So here we are. The people who work for the Gazette really love Crozet. We're attached. We understand that we need to get this news around if we're going to have a wholesome community. And none of them depends on the Crozet Gazette for their actual livelihood. They're freelancers for me. The Gazette has no employees. Everybody who works for the Gazette is freelancing. Except me, I own it. I got to pay the taxes on it, but. Even Allie's their own company. Yeah, you need graphic design? Go ahead and try it. Yeah, she's good. You see the signs in the IGA? She did those. Just all kinds of stuff. But she has a separate business. Okay, her main business is doing the design work for the Gazette, but she has a separate business. And everybody who writes for the Gazette is, I give them a check and they pay their taxes. Is the way it works. If we had to have an employee, we'll be in the situation that the Daily Progress is in. The overhead is too high, So there's the business plan. When people bring it up to me, the business plan of the Crozet Gazette, I'm going, well, really haven't got a lot to say about it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it is working. So I want to say a few things about the state of journalism, and I think that the Gazette is a little bit of an iconoclast with the trend. We try to be old school. Early American newspapers were very highly polarized. I don't know if you know much about Thomas Jefferson, but the guy was constantly pilloried by the newspapers. It was very vicious, and they would just print lies and so forth. And this went on for a long time, and newspapers were in very bad repute in America for a long time. And then in the second half of the century, after the Civil War, they began to try and professionalize journalism and establish standards for it, like fairness, honesty, accuracy, this kind of stuff. And you would just think this was like normal. Any person with integrity, you should have these things, right? Newspapers didn't have to have them. Jefferson, since he's on my mind, he said, would you rather have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government? Guess what you picked? Yeah, newspapers without a government. But what's happened recently, and I think the determination to get Trump, and why they're scared of Trump, but the determination to get him, they're breaking a lot of rules. And professional rules. I mean, in law and politics and journalism, they're just breaking a lot of rules. They're determined to get the guy. And that's really been, in my opinion, has led to the disintegration of journalistic standards. And people put out stuff that's probably phony, and when you prove to them it's phony, they just act like, so what the hell, on to the next thing. There's not much of a sense of shame left in journalism. The Gazette is trying to be old school. And it really matters to us. If you can find something that we printed that was wrong, we'll happily correct it. We scrub our stuff up as good as we can. We have experienced writers who know not to tell lies or fibs or phony stuff. And we're trying to sort of be a little bit more of that old style of journalism. Journalism, get real. We used to call it reporting. You didn't have to have a college degree to do it. You just have to be dogged and be fair. Maybe we should call it reporting again. But that's our standard. And I think one of the reasons that we stand out against other papers is because they're a little bit more guilty of advocacy. Now, you could probably guess how I'm going to vote. I don't know if you'd be right or wrong. But you shouldn't be able to guess how I'm going to vote after you read a story in the Gazette. The Gazette should be clean. Just nothing but facts. And then you all decide how you feel about those facts, what your opinion is and so forth. Anyway. And that's what the newspaper does in a community. It organizes opinion. Democracy is basically a system of government that works on opinion. So where do you get your opinions? You get your opinions from your information, right? And so how reliable is that information? And we're trying to be as close as we can, upright, dependable, and fair to you and everybody that we talk about, and considering what you need to know from the paper. I think this is a crucial role. The Gazette gets around a lot of places. I use this story a lot. I don't know if you all know Dwayne Zobrist, lives over here at Canary Cottage, and he's a lawyer, very successful guy. He got appointed to the Planning Commission. It's a very last minute thing for the Gazette on its deadline. And I said to Dwayne, I need to get this in. We wrote a 2-paragraph story, had a little thumbnail picture of him, and put it on the front page that he had been appointed. The next day, Dwayne called me up. He said, I just got a call, international call. He had a friend in Brazil that had seen that 2-paragraph story in the Gazette announcing his appointment. Good God. Are you kidding me? So you never can tell, where it goes. And I think it goes places because people like it. They read the story and they say, I want so-and-so to know about it. And it gets passed around. We put out 5,500 paper copies a month. And, a lot of people are picking up multiple copies because they intend to send it somewhere. And that's we're sending it somewhere and it's getting around. And we get calls from all over. I got a call from, can't think of the name of the town, Caldwell, Idaho. Caldwell, Idaho. What do they know about the Gazette? What do they care about? We won't get into the problem, but they knew about us in Caldwell, Idaho. To me, that just shows quality sales. It goes places. And if you care about quality, I don't know if you all know Tommy Burford. Tommy Burford was a big Apple genius, lived down in Amherst. And he once said to me that I've gone around the world talking about an apple. And it was true. He's a very famous guy. You could see him. He was up at Monticello all the time, helping them there with their stuff. And the Gazette can go around the world too, if it cares about the quality of what it puts out. And it has done that. So we're a little iconoclastic in the trend, I would say. And we're trying to show other papers how to do it right. When I first had the idea to do the Gazette, and I was not sure if I could pull it off, I collected papers from around the state, looked at the ones I admired, and then I made appointments and I went and talked to their editors. Took them out to lunch and said, tell me everything you can about how you do your paper, because I'm going to give it a try in Crozet. Had good luck with that, made a lot of friends, and so forth, doing that. There's just no question. I told you about Mary Ryson, where I said, well, if we had a newspaper, they wouldn't be getting away with that. And I think that's true. And the Gazette has stood up the county several times in its history. And I think we have a better community because now they realize that they better get our opinion before they make up their minds what they want to do. You never forget this, folks. Local government is a constituency in itself, okay? We think we hire them, pay them, elect them, all this kind of stuff, take care of our public business. Once you're in the county office building, the way you look at it is what's good for my business, and my business is local government. And this is where we get conflict with the public all the time. They want something a little bit different than we want. The zoning for Crozet was 12,000, right? That was established in 1980. They didn't want to live with that. They wanted to make it more. So you have to realize that the government has to be, I'll say, monitored, watched, and you got to keep a cold eyeball on the government. Because there are people who are willing to take it over and use it for their own purposes. And it really requires only the public can stand up against that and make it go away. And that's what we're trying to make the Gazette do. We're organizing opinion on a geographic basis. Okay? You can be a community because you know about making shoes, or you know about whatever you know about. There's communities of all kinds, but we're talking about a community that looks at geography. And we're doing okay. We distribute from the Greene County line down to Bold Rock, the Cidery, Nellisford, and we distribute in Charlottesville a little bit. The Gazette's problem with Charlottesville is that they read the Gazette and then they call me up and they say, can you do this about Charlottesville? Can you do that about Charlottesville? Could you bring your paper to Charlottesville? I said, no. I said, no, y'all need your own paper. I can't do that for you. So we distribute down there mainly where we think the government will pick it up, mainly their office building and on the mall and a couple other spots for convenience. And then we distribute it also in Waynesboro. We're very popular in Waynesboro. I don't know if y'all know that, but we give up about 1,000 copies a month in Waynesboro. And frankly, we have a reputation over there, which is all fine. We don't write about them very much unless we think that it's important for the Crozet people to know. When I first came to Crozet, which is 43 years ago, you would see the News Virginian box on people's driveway and the Daily Progress. And I thought, these people aren't reading the Waynesboro newspaper. Why is that? And having lived here now all this time, you know, you're equal distance from Waynesboro as you are from Charlottesville. And if you go to Waynesboro, you're going to find friendly people, and the price of things is going to be about 15–20% cheaper than it was in Charlottesville. So now I began to understand why it is that Crozet is really pretty intimately connected to Waynesboro. You think of it as being a suburb of Charlottesville, but equal distance either way, and that changes the way people think about it. So anyway, final word on the role of newspapers. This is really critical. I think because of our nature, we keep expanding, but I think for other papers, and it's partly because of their editorial style and things like this, they're going down. And it's really critical. People want to know what their neighbors are up to. That's the appeal of the Gazette. In the business, they say names make news. Okay, names make news. And when you write a Gazette, you're looking to see how many names you can get in there that are making news. This is one of the reasons we try and cover high school sports a little bit, because you can get a lot of people's names in when you're talking about the kids who are playing. And of course their parents are happy, and the parents of the other kids on the team are happy, and the kids who've been practicing all this time, they're happy because finally got a little recognition for it. But names make news, so we're trying to get names into the news. I don't know what's going to happen to the rest of the industry. There's so many divisions. You can look online. There's just 1,000 places to spend your time looking at stuff. In the past, we didn't have these options, so naturally everybody was sort of focused on their newspaper. TV came along and it broke the audience in half. Half the people wanted to look at the pictures, half the people wanted to read the words. And newspapers sort of coped with that because they still had a little bit of a monopoly. And as things have gone on, now we have all these independent podcasters, things like this. There's a lot of different places to get your news, and the advertisers are aware of that. So I think the Gazette survives because we've got a good consumer base for our advertisers. I mean, we were 2,000 people when I started the Gazette. We're 12,000 now. They know that. But for a lot of papers, it's just not true. The other thing that happened was that most papers were family owned. If you're Virginian, you know the Bryant family, they owned the Times-Dispatch. They were a big deal. I mean, a really big deal. They built a building for UVA, Bryant Hall, English Department. Here's the cash, folks. Build yourself a building. That's how lucrative newspapers were. But when you have basically a banquet, you know, of alternative sources, it cuts down the newspaper revenue. Where do we get our money? Like I say, if you're quality, they'll come to you because they know. But for a lot of papers, it's not true. So the Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, his company, you're all familiar with this company. About 6 or 7 years ago, they came into Virginia, North Carolina, and Missouri. And they bought about 60 papers in those 3 states. And they had picked those 3 states because they thought that they had the best likelihood of commercial success. They bought the TD, they bought Lynchburg, Fredericksburg, Daily Progress, Culpeper. They don't like about 20 of these things. When you have family ownership, the Gazette has family ownership, you take a longer view, right? What's good for me in a year? What's good for me even out past farther than a year? When you have corporate ownership, you got to own up some cash every 90 days, right? So their point of view gets very near term. And this has led to the destruction of news gathering. Family businesses would take a punch and figure out how they were going to get around it. But the corporate, you know, you haven't got your 5 or 6% there, toast. So this is what's happening to the papers. In Virginia in particular, all the papers that Berkshire Hathaway owns, and I mean, they're basically every one but the Post, Gazette, a few other papers. There's a handful of independents left. What they're doing is just draining them out, bleeding them out. And I was telling you about Louise, our proofreader. She was news director, well, vice president at the UVA for, that's not vice president, some kind of, for university relations. And so she's very committed to the newspaper game. And a couple of months ago, her subscription ran out and the Daily Progress said, yeah, well, to renew $830 a year. $830 a year. Are you freaking kidding me? I don't think she renewed, and for her that's a painful thing to do. But mainly the business plan of the corporate ownership is to squeeze the last little bit of subscription money they can out of, frankly, this generation, because they know the younger people aren't paying attention to them, and see how much they can get before they fold it up. And meanwhile, they're laying off their staffs and they're not covering. And Daily Progress is a few sports pictures now. They're really letting us down on covering local government. They don't even have a local government reporter. Number one person they should have. Watch the government. No, we're going to blow that off. And so we'll see. I don't have high hopes for any of those newspapers long term. Let's see, there's a couple of things I wanted to say, but maybe they'll come back to mind later. Can I entertain questions from anybody? Yes, ma'am?
Did you win 7 literary awards last year?
We won 15. We thought we were, yeah. I know, we were real proud. And it's these ladies back here. They're the ones who are winning some prizes, yeah. We actually bought a table at the Virginia Press Awards dinner, and for everybody to come. Really appreciate y'all coming out. And because we thought, well, 15, that might have said, the VPA is a thing they call sweepstakes. And if you win a bunch of prizes, you get a prize for winning a bunch of prizes. So we want to get that prize. Right. It's a big deal. I mean, it's the kind of thing the Post takes all the time, Washington Post. When we got there and had dinner and we saw the thing run out, we needed about 20 prizes to win, maybe even 22, 23. So I appreciate the question. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
The 19 years ago, when you went to all those editors, 2 questions here, how many of them are still viable or even in business? And number 2, would you be the business you are if you didn't sell a paper copy? Because you would save money not selling paper and just going online.
I have a philosophical objection to being only online. The thing about print, I mean, once I publish this thing, if I make a boo-boo, if I insult somebody, there's some slander in here, I can't get away from it. So when I make a printed paper, what I'm saying to the public is, this is my best effort. As far as I know, this is true and correct. You find out different, fine, but here it is. And how many times have you all gone online and think, oh, I gotta send this story to so-and-so, and you go back and it's not there? Or something else just changed. You know, they say something nasty about somebody, it gets around the world in about a half an hour, and then you go to look for it and it says, this post has been taken down. See, what print does, I can't just go pick up 5,500 copies out of people's living room and say, I really wish you hadn't seen that. It's not going to work. So print does two things. It makes us be honest and accurate, and also it says the news is available for anybody. We put it on the street. You look online, well, you've got to go look online. You've got to decide what you're going to look at, how much time, you know. So you tell an advertiser, you try and sell them an ad for your website, they're not believing it. They think the only people who come to your website are the people who come to your website, however many that is. For the Gazette, it's about 18,000 a month. So our circulation is roughly about 30,000 people. In the business, they say, if somebody picks up a print copy, you can assume 4 people read it. I think that's the industry with its head up its butt. But I will say 2 people read it. Ma read it and Pa read it. Whether or not Buddy and Sis read it, I don't believe in that. But Ma and Pa read it. So that's how we get to, this is worth about 12,000 readers, and then our online viewership, people who just read this there, it's about 18,000 a month. So we're about 30,000 readers a month. That's really as good as the Daily Progress has ever done as a subscription. They used to average about 35,000 subscribers. I think now they're down to less than 10. You know, well, I say circling the drain, they can't help themselves. You know, you reach a certain point where the momentum to disintegrate is too good, too powerful to really overcome. It's not magic or mystery to how to run a newspaper. You know, they want to ask me about it, I'll tell them how to do it. But the Daily Progress would be full of ads if they would just report on who was made Eagle Scout. But they don't know the kind of news people are looking for. They act like people want national news. Now, they'll go to the national news sources for the national news. They want to know what's happening in their own neighborhoods, their own towns, up and down the street. And it takes manpower to do that. People have to go look. This is another problem that the online services have, is that somebody has to referee the information. We have really excellent writers, but every now and again I find something I'm going, that is wrong. I know for a fact that's wrong, because I've got history. And you know, they just happen to make a mistake, and I do know better. People would come to me and say, could you start a Gazette in Orange County? I say, you need to look for the man who knows Orange County so well that you can't fool him with what you put in the paper. It's hard to find those people, I gotta say. You know, it's working here. You had another question, David, I wanted to answer.
Well, how many people from 18 years ago are still in business?
The one that I most admired and I sort of copied myself from was the Highland Recorder. And Ann Adams is the publisher.
In Bath County?
In Bath and Highland. And they're very Gazette-like in their outlook. And they will tell you who made Eagle Scout. They'll even tell you who made Tenderfoot. So, I mean, it's very local. It's the kind of, the recorder is the kind of thing where, it's this very old style, they would say, you know, Mr. Marshall's been in the hospital for a week. His mother has come to visit him. Really that kind of stuff. You know, but they're still going because they're so well loved by the communities. And you know, the other thing is there's just not that much competition over on that side of the state where they've got a lot of alternatives where to look. But they do it right, and I learned a lot from them, and I try and emulate their approach in terms of, it's the little news that is the big news to the readers. They want that little detail especially if it's about somebody they know. They get a kick out of that. So, yes, ma'am.
I would just like to thank you for what I thought was a terrific job you did on reporting about the school board elections.
Well, we tried.
Well, I think the question I have for you is, I thought y'all provided a lot of information about the candidates. I thought it was well done, and it was amazing to me how much scurrilous, terrible things have happened that were absolutely without a basis. So my question is, you've got a great product, people are reading it, but there's this really sewer of this information that gets spread around, and I mean, the newspaper does a great job. How do you, would you need more readership? Would you need a larger distribution? I mean, how do you combat that kind of?
Scurrilousness, I mean, and that's what newspapers are being used for now. I mean, I used Trump as an example earlier. They just to slander him. I mean, who knows if it's true or not? And interesting in his case, a lot of times he comes, months later he proves that they lied about him, you know. But meanwhile, what do they say about a lie gets around the world while the truth is pulling his pants on? And that's sort of true. So they know they can do the damage and not get punished for the damage. And that's why they're up to it. The way the Gazette handles that whole problem is no anonymous sources, no anonymous quotes. You know, when you read in the Washington Post that says, you know, senior administration officials say, stop reading. Because, you know, senior officials in the CIA are wanting you to think this, is the way I would look at that line. But it's, you know, so what we say is, if you're not putting your name on it, we are sure as hell not putting our name on it. So if you want it to get out there, then own up to it. And let me tell you, about 90% of people will walk away because they just don't have the nerve. I don't know if you all recall a story we did on Albemarle High School. And we went around on that because Albemarle is not our high school. You know, story about Western, okay, you know, you're in my park now. But Albemarle, here I am telling these people in Charlottesville, I don't want to cover you because I don't want to get into that whole thing of having to cover Charlottesville. I got my hands full with Crozet. But people kept pestering Lisa about it. And we thought it was instructive about really problems at the division level, what decisions were being made there. So we did it. And of course it caused a huge blow up with them. And they're still, they would still like to skewer the Gazette if they could, but they have not the opportunity. And they put it out. They were quoted in the Daily Progress shortly after that. They said that the Gazette had published a hearsay article. Man, my tail feathers were really hot over that. I was burned up. The fact of the matter was, we had kept out 90% of what we knew, and we're confident it was true. 90% of what we had about Albemarle High School stayed on the floor, didn't get into the paper, because people wouldn't put their name on it. And it just, you know, Lisa was, she said, oh, can't we use this? This is so good. I'm going, no, we can't do it. But this is why it is. We force people to put their names on the quotes. And frankly, I think if the rest of the media did that, you would see the act get cleaned up pretty quick. It's like when you read online and you look in the comments about a thing and everybody's got a fictitious name. I'm Snow White, I'm Cinderella. This kind of stuff to disguise who they are. And then they just say whatever their vitriol happens to be. You know, and it's just very corrosive. So, but that's our solution. No anonymous sources. So. Bob?
Yeah, Mike, we've been reading your newspaper since 2006, and we really appreciate it. But you're causing a little family problem here every month. Does it come out on the 5th? Because my wife sends me up to the store to get it, and if I don't come back with it,
I tell him it's the first Thursday.
First Thursday, you're right, hon. You're right.
anyhow, yeah, what day do you publish, and who actually publishes your paper?
Who prints it, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. The post office, if you're gonna put a newspaper in the mail to somebody, and we do that. At one time, we had 200 mail subscribers. We're down to about 40 because we're trying to discourage it. It's a lot of work. The postal rates keep going up. It's just, you know, what we have is mainly some old ladies who grew up in Crozet, and they want to keep up with the local history stories, and they don't want to read it online, and they're willing to pay to have it mailed to them. So if you mail people a newspaper, the post office requires you to declare your publication date and then stick to it. And their rationale is they want to know, are you going to dump 1,000 papers on us? We got to move out of here. So we picked the first Thursday. We picked Thursday because advertisers sometimes care about the weekend, and they need the paper to be on the street on Friday so that people can maybe do something on Saturday or Sunday. So that's why we picked Thursday. Right now we're being printed by the News and Advances presses in Lynchburg. We've also been, this is the Berkshire Hathaway press. They have 2 left, one in Richmond, which is printing all the papers on the east half of the state, and one in Lynchburg, which is printing most of the papers in the west half of the state. And then there's a couple of other printing presses, but they don't have the modern capabilities. For a long time, we were with Stickley, what's his, Free Press, which is a press in Woodstock, and they're printing their Highland Recorder still. They have stable clients, but they can't do some of the things that the modern presses can do. So we send it to them on Wednesday night, and on Thursday they print it, and they bring it back to us on Thursday night. And then when we get up on Friday, once the store's open, then we start carrying it around. So, but first Thursday. 10 months of the year, that'll look like it's the first weekend of the month. And then there's a couple of months where the way Thursday falls, you know, it seems like we came out a week late. But I have one lady who calls me every month and asks me, sweet country lady. And she called me, are you out today? Just today. Obviously she doesn't want to have to go out and look for it. They're just not going to be there. So, yes,
So
sir.
the Friday after the first Thursday is when you go to the store and get it.
Can I ask
Sure.
one last question
Sure.
before it ends?
Is that going to be the end? Okay.
Because I get to.
I got another question over here too.
Oh, ask that.
It's not a question, I just want to really applaud you for making your print edition available online. Any number of stories that I find that somebody in another part of the country would love to hear that story, I can go online, look at the story, send it to somebody in Texas or God knows where. And so that gives your paper longer legs.
Well, I mean, our real mission, Crozet had a sense of identity, okay? And then they declared that we're going to be a growth area. Okay, we're 2,000 people.
I'm happy about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, what are you going to do about it? But the main purpose, the people who were long established here, I mean, after a certain point, they started to feel submerged. Like, there's just all these new people. Used to be you walk in the store, you knew everybody. Now you walk in the store, you maybe know the lady behind the counter, but it's just a lot of new people. That's upsetting. What the Gazette is trying to do is basically say to the old timers, you gotta love the new people. You just gotta love them. There's no way out. And we're trying to say to the new people, you know, there was somebody here before you showed up. We didn't make this town just for you to move into. So why don't you learn some of our history and some of our names and figure out things you can appreciate about where you live and so forth. So we're trying to basically address the whole boom period of Crozet. And that's why we do so much work on individuals. You know, Teresa does a great job on the why Crozet. We started that out and we thought, let's just, you know, why do people pick Crozet? And so we tried to answer that question. And it's been such a popular story that like 3 years now, I think we're doing it, longer than 4, 25, whatever happens all the time. And it's because the individuals getting talked about, you know, brought out. And we've got a lot of fascinating people around here. When I started out, I thought I'm going to be over in 6 months, going to run out of ideas. I will talk to everybody that's worth talking to. And that's just not true. Crozet is full of very interesting people, and some very famous people, too. So, you know, God provides the budget at the end of the month, and He provides me some new subject matter, too. So, yes, sir, ma'am.
I just wanted to
tell you, I've been distributing the paper for a while. Every time we travel, I pack a couple with me, and I take them to family and friends. Because a lot of times they don't know much about Crozet, and I think they find it really entertaining to read. And the other comment is, my sister used to live here at the Meadows, and now she's in a nursing home in Charlottesville. And she can't wait to get the copy, and I try to get it to her as quick as I can. She'll call me the next day and say, Sharon, did you read this or that? And I said, Carol, I haven't even had a chance to open my copy. But I will confess, the very first article I read is always Dr. Rogers.
Yeah, I don't know, and yeah, it was a shame. He got sick, and got discouraged, and thought he was out of ideas. And he wrote a story in January of '23, and I kept saying, oh, please, 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 you don't understand how many fans you have. My mother in particular, my mother's here, by the way. But she's always on me. She goes, where's Dr. Reiser's column? What can I do, Mom? I can't beat him up over it. So, but he's better now. The guy's just brilliant. He can write about very complex medical subjects in a way that illuminates them for the reader, and there's always a punchline. He has a way of telling you information with a funny wrinkle to it. He's really ingenious. He could be anywhere as a writer. Let me tell you this little story about him. He was medical director of the ER for UVA. Okay. Well, they have their own group, this national group, and they have a convention every year. So he goes to the convention, and one of the things they do at the convention is they have a list of very enigmatic symptoms. Okay, your patient has A, and they have M, and they have X to the 2 squared kind of thing. What is their illness? And they give it to all the ER docs. There's like hundreds of people trying to figure out what the mystery clues are about. Well, he won. I mean, that in itself is a feat. He went back next year, same contest, he won again. And they came to him and said, hey, lay off. Yeah, let somebody else win, okay? So he had to, as the champion, he had to sort of step down and defer. But I don't know if you saw his column this month, he said, listen, give me some ideas. I'm willing to come back. And I said to him, I said, your fans are going to be thrilled that you're in the paper at all. It wasn't really a story. He says, yeah, I've been hearing from him. So I appreciate that. He's still in the ER, but he's about to retire. If you're ever in their ER, and I hope you don't have to go, I hope you get Dr. Reiser, and if you do, tell me you love his stories in the Gazette. So, he's a great guy, really great guy.
The last question is, because you know what's going on all the time, what's happened with the Barnes Lumberyard?
Well, we inquired about
or not?
I don't know, but we inquire about it all the time. And I know that they're ramping up their fundraising thing.
More?
Well, yeah, exactly. They want to raise, I think it's about $1.1 million or maybe $1.3 million range to build the plaza.
For us to build their plaza?
Well, we've already paid for it other ways too. Yeah. I don't want to say too much on the subject of Mr. Stoner, but anyway. They act like they're getting ready to do something.
Yeah.
But they've been acting that way for 6 years now.
For 7.
7 years? Okay. Yeah.
Some people do and some people don't.
Well, thank you, Dave.
I wanted to thank Mike Marshall for coming here and speaking to us. It's such an important thing, and what he's done for all these years, and we have just a little, a little piece of thing to go around.
Oh, yeah, I can handle that.
Yeah. All right, well,
Is that the last of the questions? Because I'm going to leave here if we're out of questions. Okay.
anybody else? One of the things that Mike's done for 18 years, and we've done here since 2011, is our third Thursday events. And it's kind of, we had to stop for the 2 years of COVID. We couldn't have people told us not to do anything, we couldn't do it. So we did. But we've been trying to do, we've overdone almost 100 third Thursday events since 2011, before I even built the building. So it's so nice to have a local person here that understands the history of it and to be part of our third Thursday. The next month is a gentleman that Mike has made with his Crozet Gazette, Phil James.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Phil James is coming, and he created the Secrets of the Blue Ridge. And Mike has been publishing that, and Ally's been publishing that for a while. And so it might be really, it's going to be really interesting what he's going to talk, and it's just going to be question and answers. So if you're interested in the area, and Mike, you are, and I know Phil really is interested in it, come with questions and answers. Or questions, and he'll give you answers. Or come with answers and give a question like John in person. Remember that?
Yeah.
So next month is that, and this month, Mike, thank you very
Thank you
much.
very
I
much.
really appreciate it. Ally, thank you very much for joining. We have any questions coming up, but that's it.
So thank you very much. Thank you.
Drive carefully because the snow's going to start.